So I will let Brian introduce himself first.
So good morning, good evening, and good night, everyone. My name is Brian Smith. I'm an escalation engineer in the project support team. I've been working in this team for probably about 9 years, and with Microsoft for a couple more than that. And supporting Project Server all the way from 2002, 3, 7, 10, 13, and Project Online, and obviously Project Pro for Office 365. I'll hand over to Ake for his introduction.
Cool. Yeah, similar to Brian, I joined the team back in 2000. Got the joy of supporting Project Central all the way up through the current version. So we love this product and excited that you all can join us today. Okay, so here's our game plan. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about what is Project Pro for Office 365, how to use it. We're going to go through the sign-up process because that seems to be a question that comes up a fair bit. We look at some downloading options for those of you who are interested in sort of getting it deployed, or if you have issues with getting it installed via the click-to-run options. And then we'll also cover the FAQ sections a little later after that. And then, yeah, we'll talk about questions and so where to go further from here. Okay, so what is Project Pro for Office 365?
Okay, so if you're familiar with Project Professional 2013, or even with earlier versions of Microsoft Project, then it's really the same thing. Same as the 2013, not the earlier versions, obviously, because there's lots of new good stuff in it. The main difference between Project Pro for Office 365 and Project Professional 2013 is that the Office 365 version is a subscription model, and it's patched automatically, keeps you up to date. So if you're using it, you wouldn't really notice any difference from Project 2013, except that it sort of gets patched for you as you go along. And there's various different ways you can use it in the same manner as Project Professional 2013, or even Project Standard. You could decide that you wanted the subscription model and use Project Pro for Office 365 rather than buying Project Standard. That's a choice you have. Or you could use it in place of the Project Professional 2013 just as a desktop project management solution. So you're just using it for creating plans, MPPs on your desktop. You're not really connecting to SharePoint or anything else. So the installation is simple. It streams to your PC. And then you can save projects to task lists to so SharePoint team members can collaborate with you, or you can save your projects to Project Online or Project Server 2013. So team members and other project managers and executives can collaborate too. So there's a question popped up in the chat window there about can I access it offline? You can access it offline. I can't recall off the top of my head what the connection limits are, because I think it does have to sort of call home occasionally just to make sure that you are the valid owner of that subscription.
That's right. And I think, if I'm not wrong, it's every 30 days or so. So effectively, as long as you have an internet connection, that's where you initially do the install, and that you're connecting with your credentials to your tenant where you signed up, that will validate that it is a valid license, and you'll still be good.
So I'm going to switch over now to my VM, which is running Windows 8.1, and I'm going to show you through the sort of installation procedure. So I'm logged into the tenant that we created. If you were with us 2 weeks ago, recorded a video of sort of provisioning this new tenant, this PJO webcast.sharepoint.com. So I've got a PWA site there, and to get to the software piece, I actually went into the gear, Office 365 settings, and then software. And it will sort of take me to this section. I've got the sort of full E3 Skew and Project Online, so it's offering me a ton of good stuff. So I've got all the Office stuff. I've got Project here as well. If I'd subscribe to Visio, I'd also have Visio appearing down here. I can see Link. I can go to the tools and add-ins, so I can get SharePoint Designer there as well. I can use the desktop setups. If I'm using an earlier version of Office, then the desktop setup helps those to work with SharePoint Online. So that can be useful if you're still running 2007 or 2010. And then I've also got the options for the phone and tablet here as well. Not particularly applicable to Project, but certainly the other Office applications available in different modes to work with different phones and tablets and so on. So stepping back to Project, and I'll talk about the Mac in a second as well when this starts installing, because that's a question that we do see quite frequently in terms of, well, I've got an Apple Mac. How do I work with my Apple Mac and Project Online and Project Professional? So I'm here with Project. I'm going to choose to use the 32-bit. I could go to the Advanced tab and select the 64-bit if I was working with very large plans, had plenty of memory, in the same way that you might choose to use a 64-bit of Excel if you're working on very large models in Excel. But default, we tend to sort of stick with 32-bit for most users. And I can click on the Install button, and I'll say Run. And that will then click up this box. I'll say, yes, I want to do the click to run. I should have showed you before that I didn't have any version of Office on this box at all, but it will become obvious when it starts sort of going through this. So it soon starts rattling the bits over to my laptop. Hey, cool.
Yeah, Brian had showed you this screen, and just a quick note, you will have to make sure that in order for the user to actually see this screen to install Project, they would have to have a license assigned to that user before they get to it. So maybe if we get a bit of time, while we are waiting, we could show the license page.
Yep, certainly. Yep, in fact, I could skip over to that now. So if we go to Admin and Office 365, and you can see projects actually starting up there in the background. If we go over to Users and Groups and go to Me, you can see that I've got a license for Project Pro for Office 365 and Project Online, and also all of the E3 plan there as well. So I'm sort of fully licensed to use this particular application. I'm just going to go back to the software piece because there will be some other interesting stuff to see there coming up in a second. I'll just minimize this. And the first thing that pops up is the license agreement. So it's sort of telling me, view this agreement, do you agree with it, and so on. I'm not going to take you through all of that. I'm just waiting a second because my screen is showing something that Ake's screen isn't. So I knew you couldn't read this. So here's the thing I was talking about a few seconds ago. So first things first, I can accept the license agreement. Obviously, I'd view it and make sure I was happy with it, but I've read it before, and there's lots of good stuff in there. I'll accept that. And we can see now that I'm already into Project Pro. Because I'm synced to other accounts, it's showing me my recently used list from other machines as well. So I've got access to lots of other sites where I've accessed MP3s, both sort of online and local ones there. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, Office is installing in the background, and I'm 44% complete. So I can use my programs, but don't go offline or restart your computer at this time. So it's very much the same experience that you'd get if you were loading the full sort of Office application down. That you can start applications, but sometimes they'll tell you that they might be a bit unresponsive because the bit you've selected hasn't downloaded yet, that kind of thing. It didn't do it for me this time because I have actually installed this previously on this particular machine. But normally it would go into this sort of getting started project. And it just sort of walks you through the steps you can use to get you familiar with how project works. So if I sort of click on start, it will take me on to how I can schedule my work. And you can see there now I've got the Office, it may be unresponsive in the corner, and it's still downloading stuff. When I tried this yesterday in the run through, it didn't actually let me click that start button. So it's coming through a bit faster today than it was yesterday. I can go on to next, and it will sort of take me through how to create a timeline. There's some learn more options there. Will take you off to some good useful content. How can I get reports to see how progress is going? How can I collaborate? So we'll be doing some of this stuff in a second. And then there's sort of a learn more section where it'll take me on to the project blog, the the 2013 Getting Started Center and TechNet that we looked at last week, and looking at some new features there as well. I'm going to go back to File and New, and I'm going to start a new project. And which shall I do? I'll do a Six Sigma one just for variety. So at this point, I'm just sort of working locally, and this project is loading up. Still streaming in the background, so I still haven't got all of the full version of project loaded, but it's obviously got enough to sort of get me started and start showing you some of the bits and pieces here. So I'm just going to go into look at this in a different view in the Gantt chart. And if I wanted to, I could sort of change one of these tasks to actually have me as the resource. I'll just put in Brian Smith in that one. And I can choose at this point where I want to save it. And for this first sort of demonstration, I'm just going to do a save as and save it to a particular SharePoint site. And just flicking around my screens, just bear with me a second. Just wanted to get to my toolbar and it wasn't showing up because I was connected somewhere else. So I'm going to go for this particular PWA site, and I'm going to have a new SharePoint site, and I'm going to save at that point and see what that then does. And the first thing it's going to do is prompt me to sign into that screen, because it's the first time I've used it. Doesn't know who I am, doesn't know what I'm connecting to. So it's Brian Smith at PJO webcast.onmicrosoft.com. Password, sign in. And that will be creating the new project site and sort of linking that all across and putting that into a SharePoint task list. So at this point, I'm not connecting to Project Online. It does happen to be a Project Online site where I'm creating that SharePoint list, and that has benefits in terms of I can then pull that list into Project Online, what's called a sort of visibility project. So even though it's a SharePoint list, I can make it available within the Project Center. But even if I didn't have Project Online, I could sort of use that same concept of just saving to a SharePoint site. Now you can see here we can't sync resource black green belt to the task list because the resource does not exist on the SharePoint server. And, I didn't go through and make sure that all the resources were sort of valid SharePoint users. So you're going to get that kind of message coming up in this kind of scenario. So I was expecting that one, fortunately. Hopefully we won't see too many messages that I'm not expecting, but see if you can spot them later on. So there we go. We're back into our. I didn't change the start date on that, so it's actually it was due 999 plus days ago. So I'm very tardy and haven't finished this 2007 project yet. So, but we can see there it's created the site for me. It's created the task list. It's given me this sort of project summary. It's showing the different phases already in the timeline. So it's quite a sort of a neat way of presenting that information. If I click on tasks, then I can go down here and see that it's there in a SharePoint task list. And I can even see that one of these, the develop team charter, is assigned to me as well. So it's just the single task that I changed to have an assignment of somebody who is actually in the SharePoint list. Just to sort of give you an idea how that works with SharePoint task lists. And if I go back to my software tab just briefly, I'm just going to refresh this, and it should, if I go on to project, we can now see that it's activated one of my licenses. So for this Project Pro for Office 365, I've got 4 remaining installs. So I've installed on my, this happens to be a virtual machine that I'm running on at the moment with Windows 8.1. I could install it on my laptop. I could install it on my PC at home. So you've got sort of 5 installs to play with. And if you happen to be out at a cyber cafe, you could even install it on the cyber cafe once you're sort of logged in with that log, and just sort of use it temporarily on there, and then deactivate it again when you've finished using it. So it's handy to sort of have those licenses about. And anytime you want to finish with a particular license, then you can just click the deactivate, and it will all sort of go away, and then you can reuse that license somewhere else. So back onto our PWA, and just bear with me a second while I switch screens to get back. I should have changed my size a little bit because I can't get to my taskbar when somebody posts on links. So that's not to encourage you to start posting lots of questions, just to mess me about, please.
So maybe while Brian's switching the screens around, a note about this particular save into the SharePoint task list. Even if you don't have Project Online, if all you have is really just SharePoint Online, for example, or even SharePoint Server 2013, this same functionality exists. You can still save up to a SharePoint site and have that same look and feel after you save it out, just like what Brian demoed without Project Online.
Okay, thanks very much, Jake. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to configure this to connect to Project Online. So I can go into, I can go back into my info and manage accounts. And I'm going to add an account here. I'm just going to call it PWA because it's the only one I've got. I'm going to put in my site, set as a default site. I usually choose an account just because I normally have about a dozen of these things showing, and I need to choose. Today I don't particularly need to, but just at least it'll show you the sort of box coming up. And I can say OK to that. And then I can close project. I'm not going to save my changes to that particular project. And then if I project just restarted for me there. I don't know if you saw the error message pop up as I closed it, but for some reason it didn't like it when it was closing down. I've seen that a couple of times when I've been playing around, because I've installed and uninstalled a few times, and it may be that it was still streaming down when I closed project. So that's probably the reason that happened like that. So this time I'm going to connect to PWA. So last time I was just sort of connecting, just opening local on my desktop. This time I am actually on the server. So if I go to PWA, browse, then I can get to see all of the projects on my server. And I can see there that I've got an enterprise project, a SharePoint task list project. I can open this one up. And that will go and pull all the information from the server. It's in read-only mode by default. I can choose to check it out if I want to. And then I can go in and be really inventive and give myself another task to do. And just link those. I'm already assigned to the team. I've done build team on this particular project before. I can link those together. Let's make that auto-scheduled. And then I can go into here and publish that again. And then I can see that the save happens and the publish happens down the bottom. Publish is 0% complete. And that should eventually go through. Just flicking over to my PWA site. One question that I've seen come up a few times when people begin to use PWA is, okay, where's my queue jobs gone to? And if you go to edit links, then you can get them from the server settings under here. So you can add server settings. I close that. Server settings, and I can do the manage queue jobs there. You also will get that coming up under personal settings. So if you're not an administrator, which obviously I am because I'm seeing everything on this particular instance, if I wasn't an administrator, I could just see my queue jobs. As I am an administrator, I can go to the manage queue jobs as well and see all of those. It's too quick and missed all those jobs going through. If I refresh, we should see that my save and publish and reporting publish for my Ent project 1 has all sort of gone through. And we can sort of see that extended in the project center as well. So there's a couple of different ways there of saving from Project Pro for Office 365. One to just a SharePoint list, another to Project Online itself. The other way you can sort of interact is to actually open up a SharePoint task list in Pro. So if I close Project now, and I'll check this project in, I can go to a task list, and I should be able to go to, let's go to site contents, and this will show me all the sites I've got, including my Six Sigma the make cycle that I created just a short while ago. And I can go to my task list here, and in list I can choose to open this with project. And it will load my task list directly into project for me as well and download that. So there's lots of different ways of interacting between sort of project and PWA. Later on we'll talk about sort of the differences when we get to the sort of FAQ section as to why you might want to do one, why you might want to do another one. It gives me the same message as earlier about the black green belt person there as well, because actually although you can't see it, it hasn't actually opened it directly from the list, which didn't include those resources. It opened it from a hidden MPP file that's held on the site. So it still knows about the black green belt, it just couldn't expose it via the SharePoint list. So just a few different ways that you can access the projects and the task lists from within Project Pro for Office 365. The other thing I'll just briefly show you while we're in here, it's more sort of a SharePoint feature than an Office feature or an Office 365, a Project Pro for Office 365 feature. But if I go into my newsfeed and onto tasks, you get to see your tasks from lots of different places here. And it's even added in the develop team charter task that I should have done back in 2007 into this list. It wasn't there when this screen first popped up, but it went around to all the different SharePoint lists and the projects to work out where my tasks were. So another task that I added is exposed through here, as well as the SharePoint task list tasks, as well as the one that I actually published to a task list from Project Pro for Office 365. So as a user, I can just sort of come into here and interact with some of the tasks here. So I can sort of say, yeah, I've done that one, and then that sort of will be sort of fed back through to the SharePoint task list and back into the project plan for that particular task in the project. So, and it's also moved it to the completed view, as we can see up there in the top right-hand corner. So that pops up just to make you think that it hasn't just disappeared totally. It's gone for a reason, and because I'm filtering by active. So if I showed the completed, then we'd see the other one as well.
Yeah, that comes up a fair bit. That's right.
Yeah.
Disappearing tasks, but actually they're completed.
Yeah. So how to find the tasks that just sort of disappeared from the view? They're probably hidden under a different type of view. So I can go back to active there. But hopefully you've seen from the way I was using Project Pro for Office 365 that it's identical to Project Professional 2013. I'll just click back to it again. And we'll take a look at the account and the Office updates. 'Cause it's here you can check for updates. So they will come through automatically, and you'll get a little pop-up in the corner of your window sort of saying there are updates available. But you can come in here to sort of automatically do them. And we can see here as well that I was patched to 4605.1003, so it's pulled in a fairly sort of recent build, even though I've only just installed it. So there's no patches available beyond this one, just at the moment.
Yeah, and a nice little tip here. There may be situations where if you're trying to force it to update, one trick that you can use is to toggle it to disable updates and then update now, and then that will cause it to refresh and sort of re-look for new updates from the server on our end here. So that's one way to sort of get it to toggle and, hey, anything new for me?
Yeah. It's a good tip. It's a good tip, Abe. The other things I wanted to show you in this page, well, a couple of things. Firstly, the connected services. Now, I've got a ton of connected services because I'm presenting at TechEd next week, so I've got various different images created that will allow me to sort of connect to those. With a Contoso brand on them. I've got my own OneDrive that I'm sort of not connected to at the moment because I need to sort of put my name and password in. I've got various Microsoft sites that are in the Microsoft.SharePoint.com environment. And the one that I'm using at the moment is the Microsoft GBS site, the PGO Webcast.Microsoft.com. And I've also got the Office Store as well. So I use a different account to get to the Office Store. And one question we sometimes get is, I'm putting this account in and it doesn't seem to be the right one. And the option up here to switch account is often where you need to go to make sure that you are using the right account to sort of connect to whatever resource it is that you're trying to connect to. So there's not too much that's different about Project Pro for Office 365. It will look different here. You'll see the subscription product information, but just about everything else is pretty much the same. I can use it to save local MPPs. I could connect to an on-premises Project Server 2013 if I wanted to, as well as Project Online 2013s as well. So lots of flexibility there. I'm just going to go back to the slides for a couple more. And then I'll be coming back to the demo to talk a little bit about deployment. So that was a demonstration that I already did. In terms of signing up, we went through this last week in terms of a Project Online sign up, and we walked through the video on the E3 sign up and then adding project. It's the same kind of thing. If you've already got Office 365, you just go to your Office 365 Admin Center, purchase services, and it will be one of the offerings there. So you can just add it at that point. If you don't have it, then I put the URL there in the slides as well. So you can just sort of search for Project Pro for Office 365, look for the office.microsoft.com site, and it will take you there and give you the option to buy a subscription, or there's a try now option for that one as well. So you can just subscribe purely to Project Pro for Office 365 if you want to as well. And you get like a mini environment, so you wouldn't obviously have all of the big admin center that I've got that allows me to administer my SharePoint and my Project Online and everything else, but you'd still have your Office 365 settings and your software tab and be able to sort of install from that position. And just a quick screen grab there from the Office site. So this is where you would go in and buy your Project Pro for Office 365 or subscribe to it.
A question that we get from a lot of customers is, if I have my small business Skew, and can I purchase Project Pro with it? And oftentimes we have to tell them that Project Pro comes as part of an enterprise Skew because it allows you to then add on Project Online to it and Exchange and all that. So it's actually not available as part of that Skew. Yeah, because that question comes up a lot.
Yeah. And it's certainly that's feedback we do give to the marketing team as well. So no promises on any changes, but to me it does seem logical that I should just be able to add project if I'm a small business or a medium business. But so we'll see. So download and patching options. So there's a couple of places you can download from within your Project Online tenant. I showed you one of them. You can also go to the admin center and software, but it takes you more or less to the same location. So we've already seen those. But there is one other thing you can do, and that's use the Office deployment tool, which is useful if you need to distribute within your organization an install point. So rather than everybody sort of downloading it directly from the internet, you basically create an internal share and your users would download it from there. So it can be sort of an easier way to do deployment. The other time we found it to be useful, and it's probably not so much of an issue now, but certainly when we launched sort of a year ago, we were seeing that particularly if you were on a slow internet connection, you could have problems with the download, and it would seem to get stuck or it would take forever. And the problem was if you ever cancelled it, you were then in a sort of a limbo state, and you'd probably have issues where you couldn't install it again, you needed to sort of clean everything up and that sort of thing. And we found that a lot of customers, the Office deployment tool was a very useful way for them to be able to do the download in sort of one go, and then do the install from that download rather than sort of using the streaming mechanism. I've not heard that being so much of an issue, because I know that on the Office 365 side they did make some changes to how that whole sort of download happened and how it would detect slow connections and that sort of thing. So, but if you do run into those kind of issues, then this might be a useful thing for you to do. As I mentioned, their patching is automatic. Obviously you can go on to the option under accounts, and you can manually sort of pull something down if you're sort of waiting for something to come. And there's some articles up on Office 365 that talk about how to configure desktops and so on with updates, so you can sort of go out and see those. So the Office deployment tool, and I'll show you, I'll do a quick walkthrough of this in a short while. This allows you to download files to a share or local drive for individual use, and then install from there. So that the link goes to the Office deployment tool. I'll take you into that in a second. And you can choose different products to download, and you can choose multiple ones as well. So you could have Office 365 Pro Plus, you can have Visio Pro, you can have Project Pro, and you can also have SharePoint Designer as options there to download. And there's two settings that you would need. One is creating the install point, so setup.exe/download and then path to the configuration.xml. Or you could install from once you've done the first one, you can then install by doing the setup/configure and then give the path to the configuration file there. So the configuration file looks something like this. This one's just got one product in it, Project Pro Retail. And the source path I'm putting there is a server share, so this would be something that anybody could sort of use who has access to that share. The one I'm going to show you is actually going to be doing it locally instead. So I'm going to do the demonstration of how this all works. And wait for my browsers to come back up. And there we are. So the first thing I'm going to do actually, before I do the Office deployment, and we'll see how we go for time, I might actually get a chance to do the configuration as well. But this is a page that if you do run into a problem and you need to, if the Project Pro for Office 365 isn't installing properly, then you may want to come here, which will do a sort of a cleanup and get everything working for you again. So I can just sort of follow these steps. I can open this up. It will start for me fairly soon, and I'll just leave it running, and if we get time it may have finished and we can do a reinstall. If not, then we can skip that bit. One thing to be aware of though is this uninstalls everything that you've got as far as Office is concerned. So we've had issues where customers use this and then they found that the Visio's gone and they hadn't got their install media or whatever it might be. So if you're going to run this tool, you need to make sure that you've got all the install media for all of the Office that you've got on your system to be able to sort of put it back again. Obviously, if you've got subscription to Office 365, then that will all come back automatically.
Yeah, and a common scenario that comes up is if you're installing Office 2013 and you've already installed Project, or if you already have 2013 installed and you try and install Project, and the install didn't complete, you know, where you had to take the laptop offline, something like that, then you find that you have an install that doesn't work correctly, and that's where this comes in super handy. You know?
So I'll leave that running in the background. The Office deployment tool for Click to Run is here. I've already downloaded it into this particular directory, and this is all you get. It's the Office deployment tool and setup. So I've already done the, if you like, the deployment part of it. I haven't pulled any information down yet, so this is just the tool that's installed. If I go into configuration, I can see that I've got two products here. I've got Project Pro Retail and Visio Pro Retail, and my source path is to this same directory. And you'll notice that just disappeared on me. That's because the Office deployment toolkit also shuts IE down as well. So that's why IE disappeared in the middle of that piece. But I don't need it just for now. So I'm going to run the setup. So I'm just going to start up a command file, and I'm going to run as administrator. And I'm going to go to my project directory, and I'm going to run setup / configuration C : / project / configuration.xml. And hit that. Oh, I've done it wrong. /download. Sorry, got the wrong flag there. Should have looked at my instructions. And if we go back to my directory,
looks like there's a bit of a delay. There we go. All right, it's picking up now.
We can see that it's now created folder called Office, and that's got data in it, and there'll be stuff that's sort of streaming down to this. So this is doing the sort of the install, and then I can run the configuration from here if I want to as well. So that the install is still running, so we'll perhaps come back to that later if we get a chance after the Q&A. But basically what you would do is just run the setup / configure and then the path to that configuration file. For me, it's just a local file, so only I could run it. If I'd wanted Ake to run it, then I'd have put it on a share and shared that out to him as well. So let's just switch back to the slides. So that was the ODT Office Deployment Tool demo. And the next slide, we've got some getting started FAQ. So we might answer some of the questions that are already sort of coming through the chat window as we're going through these. Yeah. Some of these I've sort of talked about as we were going through. I didn't show you, I meant to show you when we were talking about managing installations. I did a blog post a while ago on how do I use Project Online with the Mac or Project Pro for Office 365. So perhaps as we go back into demo mode at some point, I can show you that blog post. But there's lots of virtualization options, Parallels or VMware, where you can get a Windows environment within your Mac, and you can run Project Pro for Office 365 within that environment. And obviously, you can just use the browser for all of the Project Online stuff. So I'll take you back into that a little bit later on. But over to you, Ake, to walk through some of these getting started FAQs.
Yeah. So like what Brian demoed, a bunch of these he's already showed us, but we thought we'll just sort of walk through and talk about some of these frequently asked questions and maybe have a discussion around it. So managing installation. So if you go into the Admin Center page, make sure that the user has a Project Pro license installed. Otherwise, they won't see the option to install Project Pro. And yeah, they get 5 installs per user license. So really handy. Should we talk about the whole Mac install conversation as well? So as far as the install is concerned, it's available. Project Pro for Office 365 is only on Windows. It's not available to be installed on Mac. although we seem to get a fair number of questions on that. Although you can use Project Online with Mac, just because it's browser based. Any other thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, I'll just whiz over to the browser window that I was going to show while I was there, and just show you some of the stuff I captured. Let's wait for this screen to come up.
And while we are waiting for the screen to come up,
the link has just decided it doesn't want to show me that screen and is restarting. So I'll let.
Okay, we'll continue on the questions, and then we can come back to this. Connecting from Project Pro to Project Online, Brian demoed that. It's actually pretty simple to do. Like you saw how Brian did that. Basically going to the info option, manage accounts, create an account, point to your PWA URL, and that's really it. Saving and publishing projects to Project Online, Brian demoed that as well. Essentially, once you can only do that once you actually connect to your Project Online PWA site. Otherwise, you really don't have that option to do that. Checking for updates and product activation. There was a question earlier on link about someone asking about working offline, and that the install does check to make sure that, hey, you are who you say you are and that you still have a license, so you periodically check. And so you just need to make sure that you log in as yourself for that particular tenant that you're licensed for, and that will ensure that the product stays activated on the machine that you're working on. And then how to check for updates, it's under the account settings. You can check for updates. You can toggle it to have it sort of force a check. So that's quite handy. There it is. Brian's got a...
Yep, my link recovered, and I got the browser open. So I did a post quite a while ago, back in fact, nearly a year ago, May last year, and just got a Mac out of our labs. It's running OS X 10.8.3. Obviously, a lot of the PWA stuff just sort of works as you'd expect, just running in the browser. You can obviously run IE there as well in the virtual environments. So that was quite useful, because I could then, from those virtual environments, I could fire up Project Pro. So there's even an option in Safari to be able to open the current page in Internet Explorer once you'd install the Parallels Desktop 8 environment on it. So within there, I could sort of pop up Project, and it would give me the usual sort of log on to Office 365, get into PWA, and then actually load up Project Pro as well. And Project shows in the toolbar there as well as a separate application, so you can sort of pop that up whenever you need. Obviously, you can use Excel on the Mac and directly connect to some of the Project stuff. I don't think that supports OData, as far as I'm aware at this point. But if I want to get to the OData stuff, I could use Excel 2013 in my virtual environment. So I tried both Parallels Desktop 8 and VMware. Both seem very straightforward to use. So go out and have a read on that one. I think if you just sort of search for Project Online, how to use my Apple Mac, Bryce Smith, something like that, you'll find that one there. So I'll just skip back over to the slides again.
While it's loading up. Okay, well, let's continue on to the other common question, which is, should I be editing via PWA or Project Pro? And the recommendation that we give is, if you have the option to actually edit your project plans via PWA, which is you don't need to use Project Pro. You can go via the browser, open up the project, and drill in and edit. But it's really intended for lighter weight edits, not heavy duty editing of the plan and management of the plan itself. So imagine you're on the road, you need to add a couple of tabs, assign a bunch of people, and you're not at your desk, but you do have a browser. Then certainly that's one way to do that. But if you are, planning to do major editing of the plans, then Project Pro would be your best bet.
Yeah, particularly if they're very large plans you're working on as well. It's certainly, far easier to sort of scroll around and move around and create different views and work in totally different ways with Project Pro compared to sort of working on, as Ake said, sort of lightweight type work on the project that you might want to do in PWA.
Yeah, and that ties in very well with the next question. So what's the difference between a SharePoint task list and an enterprise project? Because if you go into the PWA UI, you have the option, I want to create a new project. You're prompted by default with either an enterprise project or a SharePoint task list. Now, early on in the demo, when Brian was creating his project and saving it out to the server, it was actually creating it as an enterprise project by default in the portion where he was connecting to Project Online. So really the intent with a SharePoint task list is for it to be a lighter weight task list, not intended to be relatively small, a lot more informal, not intended for heavy sort of scheduling or tracking functionality. If you really need the sort of the heavier duty scheduling, tracking functionality, then really enterprise project would be the one that you want.
And as you notice when I went into the news feed and my task list, and it's fairly easy there to mark tasks complete, whether they're enterprise project tasks or just SharePoint task list tasks. But if you're working on a project, it may not just be a case of sort of checking them off. You really want to go in and say, okay, well, this task is 50% complete, and you may even want to change the end date or the estimate to complete or something like that. So the enterprise project interaction gives you a lot more capabilities than a SharePoint task list would in terms of giving that feedback to the project manager on how you're progressing with that task, whereas the SharePoint task list is, yep, done it, carry on, move on.
Yeah, maybe a more simplified version of it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And switching accounts. Brian demoed that on how to switch accounts. Comes up a lot, but once you know where to go and which option to select, it becomes really sort of straightforward and you know where to go. Especially if you have multiple tenants that you're working in, or you have like an internal and sort of external site, then you may have to do switch accounts. Looks like we got a couple of questions on Link. Should we cover those first?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to, let's see. All right, so that's the one from Richard. So is there a way to add a comment field in the task list on SharePoint? So I think he was asking right about the point where we were doing the demo on the SharePoint task list. So you can certainly modify the SharePoint task list with another field. So, how about that? A next question or answer? Yes, you can. Yeah. So basically, just modify the list. You can add an additional column in there, and that will cover it.
Yeah, it's like most things in sort of project. If you're familiar with PWA, you're usually okay to sort of add your own stuff in lists and things. You probably don't want to take away any of our stuff or rename any of our stuff because things might break then. And that one of the other points I wanted to raise, I meant to raise it when I was doing the demonstration. We've had a few customers calling in where they are using a SharePoint task list and they've actually turned on versioning in that task list. Mm-hmm, yeah. And one of the things that you'll find is that when we sync between Project Pro and the task list, even though you may not have changed anything, it's actually doing some sort of chat back and forth and it's touching the list, and it actually does create a new version on the items that are in the task list. So it's probably not going to give you the benefit you hope for to use versioning on the task list, because it will sort of rack up the version numbers even though there's nothing really changed there, just because it's doing the synchronization between Project Pro. And particularly if you've got some sort of email alert written to sort of alert you when something changes, you might get very tired of those emails very quickly. So there's another sort of aspect of just sort of how you want to use them as to whether they're going to work for you or not. I love it when you answer your own questions. So So what's the next one there?
All right, looks like it might be Project Lite. So aren't there two different types of licenses, Project and a Lite license for Office 365? How is functionality changed for a Lite user? And can you have a mixture of Lite and Power user licenses to assign our Office 365 users?
Okay, that's a great question. And on the 1st of May, so in fact after the last session and before this session, we released the Project Lite Skew. And I did a blog post on that one on the Project Support blog, just sort of talking about what the Project Lite Skew is. And it isn't a Skew that would give you access to Project Pro for Office 365. So it is just for the team member. So it's aimed at the person who's filling out their task list, responding to the project manager in terms of how complete their tasks are, doing their timesheet, collaborating on documents, that kind of thing. So it's not the sort of project manager level where you're going to be interacting with the project and editing the plan, even in PWA. It's more for the sort of team member just interacting in the web. And you can certainly mix and match. I mean, we'd expect most customers to, have I suppose for the larger customers, they probably have mostly team members.
Yes.
And a smaller proportion who are using the full license for their online project managers, and perhaps even a smaller portion that use the Project Pro for Office 365. I mean, it'll vary from company to company. I know some companies have a totally different mix, and possibly their team members aren't even on Project Online because they're interacting in some other way, or that they don't have the access to do their own updates. But certainly for organizations with large teams, then the Project Lite Skew is a great money saver in terms of being able to give those people access to do just the functions they need. Yeah. So hopefully that's answered your question. And similar to the last session we did a couple of weeks ago, I'll gather these questions together and I'll do a blog posting and repeat these answers and add any other information that we forget to say or can't find while we're doing the session today.
Cool. Question from Troy, is Project Online built on SharePoint? And yeah, it sure is. So we rely on much of SharePoint for a lot of what we do. And yeah, at this stage of the product, it's certainly built right in. That's for sure. Yeah. Compared to the early versions like Project Central about 14 years ago, yeah, it was certainly quite independent.
And if you sign up just for Project Online, you obviously get a subset of, or probably most of the features of SharePoint that you can use as well. I mean, there's some license limitations to how you can use some of those features, but you really have got sort of the full SharePoint. In fact, we often get the question, if people already have SharePoint and they buy Project Online, they feel they're buying SharePoint twice, but you're getting, the best way to look at it is you're getting it free with Project Online. You're not paying for it twice if you get SharePoint as well. So any more questions coming through on the chat window? Well, if there's any more questions coming through, then is where I did the Project Lite blog a few days ago. We've got our Getting Started content up on office.microsoft.com. The forums on TechNet for all of the Project Online stuff. There's also sort of Project Professional and Project Standard. So if it's a more generic, even Project Pro for Office 365 question about usage, then the Project Professional, Project Standard forum is probably the right one for that, rather than the Project Online, unless it's specifically around the subscription or download, perhaps.